Oh, hey. Well, this will be the last video in the repairing or putting a new handle on my Club Brothers Combat K-Bar knife. And this was my, let's see, fourth attempt at it. And I think I finally came up with something I'm happy with. So just to kind of recap what happened, let's flash back in time and kind of go over some of the problems I had with this. Well, I'm still here. I guess that only works on television. Okay, well, we'll do it in real time. Here was the original knife when my brother gave it to me. And you can see here, hopefully, that the leather washers had shrunk and warped and opened up fissures. There's one real big one here. There's another one here. On the other side there were a couple more. And what that did was it allowed moisture and water to penetrate into the tang area of the knife, and everything loosened up, and you got rust in there, and the pommel was a bit loose, and this guard down here, which you can see all this space in here where water got in, was loose enough to where it actually moved back and forth. So that was all loose. So there was no way to repair this, so we took all of that off. This is the old handle right here. These are all the pieces. And if you look closely, you can see here how rusted the tang portion of the knife is right up in here in the handle area. And, given enough time, that would have, slowly but surely eaten through that, and that would have been the end of this knife altogether. So I removed all this rust, cleaned this area all up. I put some rust preventative on there so that won't have that problem again. I also re-welded or welded up the hole in the tang and the hole in the pommel so that when we put the pommel back on and run a new pin through it, it'd be nice and tight and it wouldn't wobble loose. We also resurfaced the shoulders in here on the blade where and we straightened this tang out. These curves are supposed to be in it, but in the center portion in here, it had gotten a little uneven because of the fact it was working up and down. So I leveled that out. I leveled the shoulders underneath where it sits, and then when I put the new handle on, I made sure that was nice and tight down there, so that handle won't move. There won't be any space in here, and no problems with water getting in here again. So on one of our previous attempts, this is kind of what we were wound up with. And if you recall, we were using I wanted to use these. That's this black area right in here is these things. They're composite discs, for lack of a better word, and they have a nice translucent red color to them, and I thought they would break up the leather in here and give a nice effect to the handle. But in practice, what happened was as I began to sand on these, I lost that luster completely, and it turned into this dull thing that looks horrible. And no matter what I did, I tried coarse sanding it and then using finer and finer and finer and finer sandpapers until I was using like 3,000 grit sandpaper, and it still wouldn't come out with a good finish. And it also, if you look really, really closely, you can see this discoloration along the edges here, and I couldn't get rid of that either. And if you look here, you can really see that this looks like part of the leather, but it's actually this composite disc, and it's just totally the wrong color. So this was a big failure. Although it went on there okay, it was nice and tight, everything looked pretty good. I just couldn't get a decent finish on it, so I ripped that one off. So that was attempt number, I don't know, 2 or something. So now I worked on it all this morning, and I came out with something I'm pretty happy with. It's not 100%, because this is the first time I ever did this. The next time I do it, I'll be able to do it better, but I'm pretty satisfied with this. So remember, we went from this to now this, and everything's tight, everything's on there real good. I think it came out pretty good. It's got a nice feel to it. Still got the balance is right, the weight's right. It's got a good feel, and I think it came out pretty good. I didn't try to contour it like an original K-bar because, well, frankly, that takes talent, and I don't have that talent. It's pretty hard to do, so I didn't want to get. I contoured it, enough to where it'd be a comfortable grip, but I didn't try to get too fancy with it. I just tried to make the top and bottom kind of match. So there it is. I didn't do anything to the blade. I didn't clean it up or anything. There's actually what I think is a little dried blood on there, so I didn't want to take that off. Maybe there too. I covered everything. Remember we talked about using beeswax on here as a protectant. Well, I started to try that, and I didn't like the way that was going on, so I removed what I put on by resanding a little bit. And I went with more of a varnish, a kind of a blondish varnish on it. It came out a little darker than I wanted it, but it's not too bad. It's still light enough to where I think my brother will be happy with it. And after I finished that, to make sure that it was completely waterproof, I put 8 coats of a matte sealer on it, a clear matte sealer, to seal it, and so I think it should be pretty waterproof now, or almost should be totally waterproof now. And I'll tell you what I was thinking about throughout this whole project was my club brother has a son who's about 12 or 13 years old, and I want him to be able to hand this knife down to his boy when his boy's old enough, and I want his boy to be able to hand it down to his boy when he's old enough. So I think with that in mind, the way I did this, as long as somebody looks after it and doesn't abuse it too much, this knife should last a good 100 years without any further work to it. I got to say one thing about my club brother. He warned me that this knife was very sharp when he gave it to me, but I didn't realize how sharp it was. There was a really good edge on this knife. So I've got to give my club brother a lot of credit for knowing how to sharpen a knife. I don't think I could do that as well as he did. So I might get him to sharpen some of the knives that I own. Okay, so that's it. And there it is. And like I said, it was my first attempt at doing this. It was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, but pretty happy with it. We didn't use any kind of a gloss on the handle because, of course, on a combat knife, you don't want anything that'll catch any stray light or reflect in the sun or anything like that. It's got to be kind of stealthy. And you may think, well, that's nice. The handle's stealthy, but what about the blade? But for crawling around or moving around, this will be in a sheath, of course, so by the time any enemy would see this portion of the blade, it'd probably be only time for a quick prayer, and that would be the end of things. So, okay, so there it is. I'm going to give it to him this weekend maybe, or as soon as I see him, and I hope he's happy with it. I hope he's as happy with it as I am, and we'll look for another project. Okay, take care.